this time on Millennial.
So who are you and Pat excited to see? Because like I said, there's a lot of people on this lineup.
For me, not growing up emo, I would just be into seeing Paramore and Avril Lavigne. Like these smaller ones, I really don't know at all.
Up emo.
This is how I know that you didn't grow up going to Warped Tour, because a lot of these smaller bands mean nothing to you.
The FBI released that I think it's close to 55% of hate crimes towards any religion is towards Jews. Jews make up 2% of the US population and 0.2% of the world's population. And the fact that we are such a large minority and the most targeted religious group is startling. And every time I see that statistic, I can't believe it.
I feel like Micah actually uses this quite a bit.
Yes, he does. Touch base, circle back.
Oh, I say circle back
Bandwidth.
Way too much. Oh, God. I definitely say bandwidth sometimes, and I hate myself for it.
Or just to give you guys some time back, we'll finish this meeting 2 minutes
early. I'll give you 14
it's
minutes.
Thank you so much.
What? Oh my God.
I know, Andrew.
Give you some time back.
I've
Too
never
late.
heard that one before, but that would really start making my eye twitch after a while.
Welcome to Millennial, the home of pretend adulting and real talk. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
I'm Pamela.
This is episode 803, and we are joined by two people this week. First of all, who should we intro first? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Micah's. I was going to go with Micah. Micah's back. Welcome back to the show, Micah.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to be here for my annual January appearance. I feel
Micah texted me.
It's been a trend.
He texted me New Year's Eve like, hey, Happy New Year. Also, I think it's my time to come on Millennial again.
Mm-hmm.
He was jealous because I was on Millennial. That's what really happened.
That's true. Also back is Chloe, our social media manager. Chloe, we got rave reviews when you came on the show a few weeks ago when you made your Millennial debut. Everybody was excited. A Gen Zer is finally on the show.
I know. Did y'all miss me?
Always.
Good to be back.
All right. Chloe, okay. We got Chloe a new microphone too. So she sounds great.
Upgraded, baby.
Chloe, actually, it's perfect that you're on this week because we have some big news about our own social media channels.
Yeah, we do. Let's go.
I'm already dying. So we are getting into the TikTok game. Millennial is launching a TikTok. TikTok.com/millennialpod.
Yeah.
.com. Who goes to .com? Shouldn't it just be at Millennial Show on TikTok? Like, you think people are going to go to the website?
That's
true,
they're not going to type it in.
Yeah, okay. I know. I'm old-fashioned.
Go to Millennial Pod on TikTok.
There you go.
Check us out. Follow us. Share all of our shit. Hype us up. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. This is basically like Laura and I basically conspired behind the scenes and was like, we are getting a TikTok and it's happening. And I finally convinced Andrew. So everyone follow us, check us out, and you'll see all of our faces on there.
Why did we skip over this thing about you getting lucky in the document?
That's for hashing it out. That's for Patreon.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Why did we skip this thing?
It's very intriguing. There's nothing more in there other than you getting lucky. So
Maybe
I'll
we
tell
can
you
start
later.
with that in After Dark, and it'll still be on the Patreon.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can discuss it in After Dark this week. It's not. Don't get too excited.
Typical
it's
Micah
very me.
wants to jump into the dirty stuff right away. Come on.
So, Chloe, what can people expect on our TikTok? Like you said us, but
they can expect all of your sexy faces. A lot of funny outtakes from the show, maybe some stuff that honestly didn't make it in, so behind the scenes moments, and just a lot of fun. We're going to have so much fun, and that's really what TikTok's about. So I hope that everyone loves our TikTok, and we'll also be posting on Instagram Reels, but DM me, let me know what you want to see. And I do it for the fans. So
I'm I'm so excited. I got to say, this morning, I, woke up and I have this ritual. I get my morning coffee. And before I start work in the morning, I drink my coffee, read up on some news, and I go to TikTok just to see what the algorithm is going to serve me. And the first thing that came up in my For You page today was a MuggleCast TikTok that you posted. And I was like, I was really bleary and out of it. So I was like, why is that my face on TikTok? And then I was like, oh shit, we did this.
Oh, my sexy cut pickup lines.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Good morning,
I have
algorithm.
to check this out. I don't have TikTok yet, so I need to download it.
Do it.
Oh.
Shocker.
Yeah, we've wanted to launch a TikTok, but it's like, how does a podcast get involved with TikTok? And actually, Chloe and I sat in on a webinar about creating a TikTok for podcasts last week, and we learned some things. So we're going to try to apply some of those lessons. But yeah, it'll be a fun experiment. So everybody follow us. We are Millennial Pod on TikTok. Millennial Pod, not Millennial Show. We're a Millennial Show everywhere else. So Pam, there was some nostalgic news over the past week or two, right?
Yeah, this was one of the biggest news stories out there in terms of pop culture, which dropped last week. So you might have seen a lot of people talking about this on TikTok, but also on Twitter and pretty much like any social space, because LiveNation surprise announced this very nostalgic When We Were Young festival. It's actually taking place in Andrew's neck of the woods out in Las Vegas this October. And it is like an emo kid's dream. So if you were into like any of like the scene, pop punk, emo bands of like the early 2000s or maybe a little bit before and after, this is probably the fest for you. My Chemical Romance and Paramore are both billed as the top headliners, but there are so many other artists that are on this bill as well. A lot of people started side-eyeing this really quickly despite the excitement, specifically because LiveNation is the company that's putting it on. And unfortunately, they actually ran into some bad press last year because they were also the organizers behind Astroworld, which we discussed on episode 746. Yeah, so obviously a little bit of a cause for concern. And then also there's the matter of like, how can all of these bands play across 3 stages in 12 hours? So, the internet's going to be suspicious. And I guess we're just going to have to see what happens when this all goes down later on this year.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot to pack into one day. And Pat, my boyfriend, is very emo. So, of course, he was very excited about this, or at least he used to be, not anymore. But he was very excited about this festival. And we did try to get tickets, but like what happened for so many people, they ran out like that. Of course, the scalpers were snapping them up, throwing them on StubHub immediately. They added a second show right as those tickets for the first one went on sale. They just announced a couple days ago there is now a third show. Tickets are on sale this weekend, but I joined a wait list. I tried to get tickets too. Pat and I were both unsuccessful. But then it said, oh, do you want to join a wait list? Give us your credit card info now. And if a spot becomes available, we'll just automatically charge your credit card. So you don't really have a chance to say yes or no after you move up in the wait list and it's your turn. So I said, yeah, why not? Give it a shot. We live here anyway. And just like 2 hours ago, I got an email. I think this means we're getting tickets for the third show. It says your When We Were Young waitlist request was approved. And it says for October 29th. And it says we're going to be charged for our tickets tomorrow. The email is oddly worded, but I think we are getting tickets after all.
I love it.
Exciting.
So jealous.
Yeah, like me too.
Are you kidding me? Oh.
If any of you want to come out here and see it with Pat, that's fine by me.
I literally almost said that. I saw this pop up on my feed and I was like, yo, do I text Andrew and ask if I can crash? Like Avril fucking Lavigne, are you kidding me? I based my whole look after her. I continue to listen to her music on the reg. Like I saw this and I was like, now that's a festival. But then it also reminded me of my super emo ex that listened to metal. And then I got triggered. But I still think that this is worth going to. And I'll go with Pat. No problem.
Okay. Well, maybe. I mean, I'm not making any promises. Maybe I want to go and see. Like,
Andrew's gonna have the most FOMO. Like, he's gonna be there.
That's true.
Don't doubt that. But who
That's true.
are you and Pat excited to see? Because like I said, there's a lot of people on this lineup.
For me, not growing up emo, I would just be into seeing Paramore and Avril Lavigne, maybe some Jimmy Eat World. Like these smaller ones, I really don't know at all.
Up emo.
This is how I know that you didn't like grow up going to Warped Tour, because a lot of these smaller bands mean nothing to you.
All American Rejects, I recognize that. Dashboard Confessional. So yeah, there's some bands here I'd be interested in seeing.
Was it general admission ticket?
It is.
Standard
Yeah,
price?
we're gonna be standing all day.
Yeah, that sounds awful. But for these bands, I would. I'm not trying to tell on Pat or anything, but I think he's wanting to invite everyone to stay at y'all's house, Andrew. So
that's fine.
Yeah,
you can come out. I mean, get your own fucking tickets. But
yeah. No, so Pat and I were talking about this. He was like, you got to get tickets. You got to come. And I was kind of like, okay, on the one hand, I'm not confident about being able to get tickets, although I would desperately love to go. But I'm also not confident that this isn't going to get canceled.
True.
That's the thing that's scary. And then the other thing is like super spreader event. So
at outdoor events, though,
if people are crammed in, sweating on each other, I don't know.
There have been a lot of festivals over the past 2 years, and I don't think we've heard of any major outbreaks at an outdoor festival. So I don't mind this personally.
A lot of sporting events too. I mean, especially if you've been watching the NFL, that's in the midst of playoffs. Their stadiums are packed. College football playoffs, they were packed.
Yeah.
So
my thought
I'm not sure what the reports were coming out of that, but
right.
It is worth noting.
When I was talking to Pat, I was like, well, what we could do is we could just plan a trip to come out around that time to visit regardless. And if we happen to get tickets and if we feel safe participating, then we can go. And if not, it's not a wasted trip because we get to hang out and see your new place.
Vegas, baby.
See Vegas.
Let's go. Hell yes.
Are we all doing this?
You and me, Laura. Who cares?
Pam,
if
you're
anyone
welcome. Micah, it doesn't look like you're seen, but Pam, Laura, Chloe, you all are welcome. Come on out.
I'm just jealous that I don't get texts from Pat. Like this is very disappointing.
Okay, I didn't get a text from Pat either.
Okay, I feel better now, Pam.
I was an emo kid. There's still an emo baby that lives in this heart. And that's just something that Pat and I have bonded over in the time that we've known each other. So that's why. That's the connection. I mean, look at me. Look at me and tell me you're surprised.
Yes, look at you. But Pat does not look like he was ever emo. He looks like a clean-cut gay.
Does he have like old school pictures with like the,
Oh, hell yes.
Yes,
he
there's
does.
a photo like that. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I need to see them.
I de-emoed him. Demoed him, you could say.
But
God. Big news, this just saying tickets for a spot on the floor of my house to sleep going on sale this weekend, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Wait,
tickets
we have to pay?
Tickets are going for $100 a spot. So get ready.
And you have to COVID test before you go.
Yeah, and you have to COVID test
Will
upon
you
entry.
issue refunds if the When We Were Young Fest gets canceled?
A 50% refund, yes, because the other 50 is going towards setting up this ticketing system.
What if you agree to walk Brooklyn?
Yeah, okay, $25
Is that
discount.
a discount?
I feel like that's a
A little
prize.
sweat equity.
Nah.
That's smart.
I will babysit Brooklyn the entire time.
Me
I'm
too.
there.
That is not a thing that's like hard to do / I already want to do that. So
I'm going to be babysitting Brooklyn when you all are at this emo festival.
Honestly, if the emo festival is canceled, whatever, let's go to the fucking slots. Like, hello?
Or also, we could get in Andrew and Pat's living room and just blast a bunch of emo music.
There you go.
And jump around singing it like crazy.
That
Like, make our
sounds
own emo night.
Really sexy. And I'll be there. I'll be there.
I got a park right behind me. We'll just start our own festival at the park.
Your neighbors are going to love us.
All right. Well, this is very exciting news. There was one extra note here, Pam, about the booking fees.
Yeah, no. So like, honestly, this is something that I've been wanting to bring up for a while on the show. Obviously, nobody's really been going out to concerts for a minute, or at least I haven't because of COVID. But, as somebody that was going to a lot of shows before the pandemic hit, it's just kind of crazy to see how astronomical the ticketing fees are. And I used to get around this by going directly to the venue to buy tickets from them. But then they started tacking on booking fees at the venue too, because, you know, LiveNation actually owns a lot of the larger venues. They're part of like Golden Boys and stuff. So it's just like really shitty that, you know, a ticket, say like not just like the When We Were Young Fest aside, but even if you're trying to buy tickets for like Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, you're already going to drop, you know, at least $100 on a good seat. And then they're going to charge you like almost that same amount just to book the tickets. And it's just wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how much are you paying? Do you know how much your booking fee is for this?
Well, I don't have the full breakdown yet. It looks like the total is going to be $660 for 2 tickets.
Whoa.
They're pretty expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
And a flight to Vegas.
And a flight to Vegas for most people. Yeah. I mean, that lineup is pretty epic. So I guess you could look at it as a once in a lifetime thing. Yeah. So Pam, once we failed to get tickets ourselves, then we went on StubHub, and the tickets, of course, were higher than they are at, you know, on the official site. But then StubHub was charging a $95 service fee on top of the $375 that the seller was charging. That's over a fourth. Nearly a fourth.
Do you know that happened to me? I sometimes, well, when it's baseball season, I will buy like last minute tickets on StubHub just because, you know, the Giants play so close to me. And I've noticed over the years too that their fees for even, you know, like nosebleed tickets to the baseball game have gone up. It's almost like an extra ticket. And it's just so wild that even StubHub is not like free of this surcharge.
I know. They're monsters. I angrily tweeted them. I said, y'all can go to hell for this.
They're not even like physical tickets that you can save anymore. Not that would make it okay, but they're all like downloadable e-tickets. So it just feels like an extra slap in the face, honestly.
Don't they sponsor podcasts?
Not this one. Not anymore.
I was about to say you just got rid of that chance. But if you did get them to sponsor, maybe you could get free tickets like all the influencers.
If they want to sponsor us, maybe I'll retract everything I just said.
No, I'm not retracting that shit. Fuck you, StubHub, and these ridiculous fees.
I'm only half joking.
Insane. So we have lots more to discuss today. Actually, Laura, do you want to set this up? Because I don't think I actually introed why Chloe and Micah are actually here.
Yeah, definitely. So after
because we're awesome.
I mean, yes, that is absolutely a given. You know, the story that's coming after this break, it's not an easy story to discuss, but we, as a panel, Micah and Chloe, all felt like it was really important to give some airtime to this week. In the wake of the hostage situation at the Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas, we wanted to open up space on the show to talk about anti-Semitism in the United States. And Chloe and Micah have very kindly joined us to discuss that, as well as helped us put the discussion we're going to have together. That it is the long and short of why we're all here today. But we always welcome any opportunity to come together and chat on the show. But I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think that we're going to learn a lot. And I know all of our hope is that it raises awareness of the issue.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a moment. But first, Felix Gray is back to sponsor this week's episode, and they are the blue light glasses that started it all. Yeah, Micah, you just pointed to yours. You have the Felix Gray glasses as well, right?
Yep, unless that's somebody's name that's on the inside of the thing right here.
No, I think that's the real thing. 5 years ago, Felix Gray set out to create eyewear that would improve daily screen time. Since then, Felix Gray has been on a mission to create a better relationship with technology. Thanks to these glasses, you can help reduce the eye strain, headaches, and insomnia that comes with staring at a screen for as long as we do every day. Felix Gray lenses filter 15 times more of the blue light that's bothering you. These can be so helpful in your day-to-day life, and they look great too. And honestly, the look of them has been a big part of why I wear them so often, because I've always been into the look of wearing glasses, but I haven't needed reading glasses or glasses just to see in my day-to-day life. So I haven't had a reason to wear them. Now I do with these Felix Gray glasses.
I do use them every single day because I am on Zoom probably more than I should be. And I think between having to be on Zoom and then also do work which that's a whole nother conversation about how many meetings there are throughout the day. It just does a lot for me in terms of protecting my eyes. Like I went through a period of time where I was having chronic eye problems, particularly on the right side. And one of the recommendations was to get blue light glasses. And these from Felix Gray have been great.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. Non-prescription and prescription glasses are available. Check them out now, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/MILL. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL.
As we discussed just before the break, we do want to talk about anti-Semitism in the United States in the wake of the hostage situation that happened nearly a couple weeks ago at the Congregation Beth Israel synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. Chloe and Micah very generously agreed to share their time with us this evening to discuss this topic. And I think we all agreed that a great place to start digging into this extremely complex topic is, and forgive me, there's no way for me to say this without it rhyming. What does it mean to you to be a Jew in 2022 in the United States?
I'm happy to take it first in that I think there's probably a little bit of a difference in religious practice between myself and Chloe. And the way I was raised, and Chloe can feel free to jump in here too, is that there's really three kind of different categories of the Jewish religion, at least here in the United States. You have Reformed, which is what I grew up as. You have Conservative, and then you have Orthodox. And for me, I mean, that was a big part of my life growing up. When I was young, into my teenage years, I was bar mitzvahed. I was confirmed, which is actually something that happens in the Jewish religion as well. There's a youth group that I was a part of. I went to Hebrew school and obviously attended a lot of friends and families' bar mitzvahs during my younger years. So it was certainly formative for me, and played a big role in who I am today. Now, I can say quite honestly, I'm not as active from a religious standpoint. I celebrate the high holidays. I celebrate Passover. So Chloe can probably speak to certain things a little bit better than I can from a religious aspect, but that's just kind of a bit of background on me. And as far as, I still think things mean the same to me in 2022 as they did when I was growing up.
I grew up in the conservative movement. I was also bat mitzvahed. I also was named actually at Chabad Poway, which we might go into a little bit later on. But I also did a youth group, and I was a madricha at my synagogue, which means I taught Hebrew school for a really long time and actually did that into college. And I now work in the Jewish world. So my life is very Jewish. I attend services pretty regularly, and I do love being Jewish. I love the culture more than anything else. I'm also Sephardic, which is pretty specific. It means that my mom actually comes from North Africa and Morocco, which is typically when we talk about American Jewry, we talk about Ashkenazi Jews, which is Jews from Eastern Europe. And my family in particular is from Morocco and Algeria. So I grew up speaking French and doing a little bit different customs than typical American Ashkenazi Jews might. And I was also born on Passover. So for me, that is like a really big, every year Passover is a really big deal. And this year it falls on my birthday, which sometimes is awesome, but sometimes it's also not awesome because I don't get a cake or a typical cake. But for me, I love being Jewish.
So were you one of the 4 questions? Does one of the 4 questions
Always.
apply to you?
Yes. I'm an only child. I'm adopted. So I always did all the 4 questions. But for me, I think being a Jew in 2022 sounds like the start of a poem. But I love being Jewish. It is something I'm extremely proud of. And it's also scary, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And it depends on where you are in the country, whether or not you feel surrounded by a strong Jewish community. But I actually went on vacation. I shouldn't say vacation. I went home to San Diego, which is where I'm from, for about a month. And I came back to my apartment in DC and found out that someone had ripped the mezuzah off my door, which is,
oh my God.
Which is a very, a very easy way to tell if someone is Jewish. And I went actually to the concierge of my building, and he said that it had happened before. And that was frustrating to hear, but not surprising. Like I said before, I grew up at Chabad Poway, and I knew the woman that was killed in that shooting. So for me, it's important that I remain a proud Jew, and I shout it from the rooftops. But my mom, for example, who I've talked about on the show quite a bit, thinks that it's putting a target on my back, and she gets scared when I do it. So I think that being a Jew in 2022 is scary, but it reinforces the fact that I'm proud and I love being Jewish.
It sounds like there's a pretty heavy degree of just constantly being on that comes with being Jewish. Would you say there's that constant awareness, Chloe, of maybe some of the...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Not with my life in DC, because like I said, I work in the Jewish world and a lot of my friends happen to be Jewish. But I went to school in Utah and you can imagine there's very few Jewish folks in Utah, and a lot of people, when I first told them I was Jewish, said that I was the first Jewish person they've ever met, which was shocking to me. And then someone asked me where my black hat and curls were.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. And that was a pretty funny one because, there's this idea of like the Jewish look. And I get all the time that I don't look Jewish. And people like to think that that's a compliment. And when I was actually rushing my sorority, this girl, not in the sorority that I had joined, but she actually said to me, "Oh, you're Jewish, but you're so cute." And then she said, "I really thought we could be friends," which was alarming to me. So I had quite a few experiences like that in Utah, and I feel like I had to be an educator all the time, just educating people about Judaism. But again, I think that that's like regionally specific. I don't feel like I have to do that here because there's plenty of Jews in Washington, D.C.
Right. And I wanted to ask the two of you, and Chloe, you kind of went into this already, but are there any personal stories that you're comfortable sharing, anything that really resonates for you, especially in the aftermath of an attack like the one that happened in Colleyville? I mean, we talked about, when we were preparing for this segment, we talked about sort of seeing an increase in police presences at synagogues and how that feels. Would either of you care to speak more on that?
The more I hear Chloe talk too, the more I think that I was very lucky in terms of the Jewish community in which I grew up in that I don't know that I ever really thought about some of the things that I think people who are Jewish have to think about today. And, I grew up on Long Island. I don't think I need to say anything more about how big the Jewish community is here on Long Island. So even when I was doing things growing up, whether I was going to, bar mitzvahs or I was going to events that were hosted, I was part of the B'nai B'rith youth organization. When I went off to college, I know.
I was wondering if that's what it was. I was going to ask you.
Well, my temple also had a youth group separate. So it was two different groups, but when I went off to college and, met other Jewish, people who became friends of mine, we went to temple together. Again, I don't know if I ever thought about it at the same level or had some of the same experiences that you did, Chloe. But I will say the story that Laura was alluding to, I remember I have a temple that's about literally 2 blocks away, walk past it every single day. And I was walking past it. It may have only been just a few weeks ago or, around the high holidays. And I noticed that there was a police car parked outside of the temple. Mm-hmm. And I don't ever remember that growing up. And again, there's an age difference here, certainly. So, but, when you would go to the temple for the high holidays, let's just say as an example, so talking about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I never saw that. Now, maybe the temple had a security guard, but that was the extent of it. Now, to walk past the temple and to see an actual local police car parked out front of it, it's not all that dissimilar from what we see going on in our schools. So it's very, very disheartening, very, very scary to think that that is something that has become so normalized, probably for many other temples throughout the country.
Yeah, I definitely saw, we have like 15 so years between us. And I think I saw, and I was a part of a transition when I first started like remembering synagogue. And at my bat mitzvah, for example, I actually don't remember a cop car or police presence at my bat mitzvah. That is unheard of now. There is multiple armed policemen when I go to, visibly armed, might I add, policemen when I go to synagogue back home, multiple cop cars. And it's difficult because on one hand, it feels like, okay, maybe people do care that anti-Semitism exists and people are seeing it. And that's why there is police presence. I hate that it's necessary. And at the same time, 20% of Jewish folks in the world identify as Jews of color. And there's a whole nother level and conversation there when it comes to police, because a Jew of color might feel uncomfortable with a police presence there, whereas someone who doesn't identify as a Jew of color might feel comforted. So the conversation is layered and difficult, but I haven't been to synagogue in a really long time where I haven't seen some sort of security police presence. I mean, they check our purse now. They scan us with, I don't know what that's, a metal detector. Every time I go to synagogue, and one thing I do now is I check the exits, because it is just realistic that when you enter synagogue, when you go to services as a Jewish person, you are risking your life in 2022, period. And that's why I keep going, because I feel as though, and I'm not a really religious person, but I do love being Jewish, and I love that I grew up in the culture and the faith. So for me, showing up and showing people that I'm not scared and that I can continue to show up.
Yeah. And it's not as though these incidents are infrequent, right? I mean, they happen very often, and it seems like they don't get quite as much coverage as other types of hate crimes, or that there's not as much of a vocal outcry from allies on social media, for example. Would you say that was the case with the synagogue in Colleyville?
Yeah. I mean, I work in social media, and I feel as though anytime there is a tragedy that befalls a minority group, there is an outpour of solidarity from allies, as there should be. But when it comes to anti-Semitism, I don't see that same outpour of support. And the most frustrating part is the FBI released that I think it's close to 55% of hate crimes towards any religion is towards Jews. Jews make up 2% of the US population and 0.2% of the world's population, which is about 15 million Jews in the world. And the fact that we are such a large minority and the most targeted religious group is startling. And every time I see that statistic, I can't believe it. And because that is the statistic, it shocks me that there aren't as many people talking about it online or showing their solidarity for the Jewish people. And every time something happens, the people that are posting are Jews. I've never seen a non-Jewish person post about Jewish solidarity.
Do you think part of that is that there is not enough done in the education system, for example, to teach people that are not Jewish about, Judaism as a religion? But then also, do you think that perhaps it's because if you're not Jewish, it's kind of easy to forget, or maybe some people don't even know that to be Jewish is like a religion, but also like an ethnicity. So it there's like kind of a disconnect there. It's not like, when you see like Asian hate, for example, like Asian is not a religion, so there's no convolutedness. Does that make sense? Like, do you think part of that is the reason why people maybe, don't speak up or don't pay as much attention?
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's a great point. I mean, as with any of these conversations that we're having, regardless of whether we're talking about things that have happened in the Black community, things that have happened against, the LGBTQ community. Now we're talking about the Jewish community. It comes down to education. I think that if people aren't educated properly, and I know there's probably no better person than Chloe to provide resources on that, which I know we're going to do. I think that it may be hard for people to know when is appropriate to speak up, because there are so many of these events that happen throughout the course of the year. Chloe just, quoted the stats from the FBI. I think sometimes it's often overlooked as impacting the Jewish community. I'm thinking even back to what happened in Charlottesville, right? You had KKK marching down the street saying Jews will not replace us. And yet somehow the narrative goes off into a completely different direction. And I don't think there's enough care that's given to the fact that that impacts the Jewish community tremendously. That's a triggering event to see the KKK marching down the street in the 21st century saying what they're saying. I just don't think enough time, energy, effort is given to it. And so I think education would help. I think it's important to see people speaking out and showing solidarity, and maybe we can move ourselves a little bit closer to something more. But that's the one event that kind of really sticks out in my mind. Most recently, obviously, we had this take place in Colleyville not that long ago. Literally, was it less than a week ago? And it's just, it seems like we don't learn. We're so quick. And we know this from literally everything that's probably talked about on this show. It disappears in the news cycle until the next thing happens. That is probably not all that dissimilar from what we're talking about in this moment.
Yeah. And there's also, it's difficult because I think people tend to overlook anti-Semitism because there's this idea that, and this goes back to the model minority myth, which also affects Asian folks in the United States as well. But it's this idea that Jews are successful. Jews have money. Jews don't need our help. Jews are not the victim. And people will point to Jewish billionaires or successful Jewish folks in media and say that, well, how are the Jews being attacked? How are the Jews victims when they've been so successful in America? And that there's two sides to that too, because the other side is that the KKK's view, which is Jews are the other. Jews are not white. Jews are not good enough to be in America, like as they feel like other minority groups. They feel the same way towards other minority groups. So it is, it's frustrating and it isn't given enough attention. I totally agree. And at the same time, I just want more than anything else for people to just say that they're allies of the Jewish community. That's all I want. And it's the bare minimum, and I still haven't seen it. And I just want people to care about Jewish lives. It seems that people only talk about anti-Semitism when a Jewish person has been killed, which has been often the past 5 years. And anti-Semitism is the highest it's been since, I think, the 70s. And in the 70s, some Jews couldn't own land in certain places in the US. So for me, that is frightening. And I just wish more people cared.
Yeah. And I think something that we've discussed, certainly, but something that a lot of progressive-minded people, not unlike those of us who sit on this panel, maybe live in this kind of fantasy world where they think, oh, I'm a progressive-minded person. I'm not prejudiced. I'm not anti-Semitic. But it seems like from having these conversations that anti-Semitism is pretty prevalent across ideological differences. Would y'all say that's true?
100%. Anti-Semitism is a bipartisan issue. There's anti-Semites on the left and the right and in the middle. And actually, they're usually, they don't hide it. People are visibly and outwardly anti-Semitic all the time. And people actually don't realize that a lot of things that we even say that is just American vernacular and slang is anti-Semitic. Also, you know, all of us on this panel really love Harry Potter, and the fantasy genre in particular is extremely anti-Semitic. The idea of a witch actually goes back to an old Jewish woman. Vampires, Jewish. Goblins, Jewish. Like, it is crazy how little people realize that anti-Semitism is so pervasive in our culture and in our worlds because it's been around since, well, for almost 4,000 years, since the beginning of the Jewish faith. So
one of the other things I just wanted to bring up too, and not that the place matters, but in this case, the place does matter even more so in that it's a house of worship. I'm also thinking back to what happened in Charlottesville. I don't know, Chloe, if you have any thoughts there, because it's almost seeming like you're taking it up an additional level by going into a house of worship and taking people hostage, carrying out the acts that you're going to carry out. It's almost like you're sending a message beyond just taking the action of holding people hostage. The fact that you're doing it in a temple, it's as if you're communicating something more than just, hey, I'm here to commit violence. I'm here to commit violence, not just against these people who are Jewish, but against the entire Jewish community.
Oh, yeah. It's 100% trying to scare the entire Jewish community, because when it happens to one synagogue, it's happened to a bunch. I'm thinking back to the Tree of Life shooting. I'm thinking back to Chabad Poway, which is obviously I have a personal connection to. Now Colleyville, like that is basically fear-mongering the Jewish community to say that they can't be outwardly Jewish, that they can't practice Judaism because they'll be killed or they'll be taken hostage. And the gunmen fully believed that Jews control the world, because the gunman asked the rabbi of Beth Israel to call another rabbi that is Central Synagogue in New York City and ask to free someone who's in prison And that person who's in prison wrote to President Obama asking him to do research on the Jews and how they have ruined our society. So it's not a coincidence. And the FBI actually, when they first did the analysis on the situation, said that it wasn't actually anti-Semitic. And then obviously they retracted that because it was idiotic. But, you know, this person targeted a Jewish house of worship for a reason and believed that Jews control the world and can contact whatever other Jew wherever they are to get something done.
And that,
And I just want to make a correction. When I said Charlottesville earlier, like just before, I meant to say Charleston because I was looking to make a comparison with what happened at the church in South Carolina. So
right. No, that makes sense. And like to Chloe's point about this idea of like these elite presences that people believe run the media and run the financial sector and run all of these other large industries. It sounds like something a crazy person would say or think, but even just in pop culture, in representations of Jewish characters in movies, on TV, that myth is very pervasive. Culturally, we're really willing to buy into this myth that Jews control everything.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up because I was talking to a friend of mine who is Jewish and also in the entertainment industry. And specifically, I was, you know, picking her brain about this topic because I wanted to make sure that I was, you know, kind of prepared coming into what we were talking about today. And she said that it's really funny that people are so quick to believe that, you know, the Jews run Hollywood, but that if that were the case, then we wouldn't see all of these stereotypes still running rampant in popular media. So even though it's not unfactual to say there are Jewish people that work in Hollywood, it's not necessarily that Jews are at the top making decisions. Even when you look at something like Mrs. Maisel, which is an example that she brought up because it's coming back and it's very popular. She said she was like really excited about it until she looked into what was like going on behind the scenes and realized that the writer's room didn't really have a lot of Jewish people in there. And so now she can't really consume it the way that she wanted to because she says it just kind of feels like they're like amplifying stereotypes instead of actually having people in there that have like a direct touchstone to that culture and that ethnicity. So
there's a few Jewish writers on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and it's a better example of good Jewish representation. Yes, there's stereotypes and they play on certain things, but I think the biggest thing, and I actually think it's Rachel Brosnan. She does an incredible job as Mrs. Maisel, but she's not Jewish. And that's also another layer is like the Jewish experience is really unique. And in my opinion, in a lot of cases, Jews should be playing Jews, just like Mexicans should be playing Mexicans and so on and so on. Like that is super important to me. And that's not to say that Hollywood doesn't have a very Jewish history. I mean, 20th Century Fox, MGM, Paramount Studios, they were all founded by Jews. And like recently, the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles, which just opened, literally erased Jews from the picture. And that to me is ridiculous because there is a lot of Jews in Hollywood. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't. We don't control Hollywood. We don't control the media, but there is a very Jewish history when it comes to the entertainment industry and Broadway as well. So for me, the fact that they just said, you know what, the huge founders of these iconic movie studios, we're just gonna not include them. And it was only the Jews. Seems a little fishy to me. And that happens. And it's like either we're erased from the picture or we're talked about in a way that's so horrible. And there's no happy media.
To quickly highlight something that Chloe just said, this museum just opened. In other words, this is still happening.
This kind of ties into the Hollywood conversation. I'm wondering, now, there are a lot of Jewish comedians. And, just thinking off the top of my head, you have, Mel Brooks, Adam Sandler, Sarah Silverman, who talks a lot about being Jewish, Jon Stewart, Seth Rogen, and the list just goes on and on. I'm wondering, because there are so many, Jerry Seinfeld, and it's so mainstream, do people think that is therefore okay to make fun of Jews? Because, and I'm not saying that these comedians definitely poke fun at their own religion and tradition. I'm wondering, because these individuals are so well known and they do it so frequently, has that maybe in some people's minds created a culture by which other people feel it's okay to say some of these things?
I would say so, because I think you see that in terms of other instances of things that are not appropriate to say. So like, for example, there is, always a big argument around the N-word being used in rap music and whether or not like people that are not Black are allowed to say that, or like who has a pass and who doesn't, which is kind of ridiculous. But I feel like it all kind of ties into that. And it's really unfortunate that I would assume that it might put some people, maybe people that are coming up in a position to feel like, like, what do I have to sacrifice in order to get people to pay attention to me? And like, do I make this joke knowing that then the people that enjoy my stuff are going to feel like potentially it's fair game to regurgitate or repeat and stuff? And it's really ugly that, there are, people in the world that are so quick to take advantage of that instead of just, enjoying and appreciating that somebody wants to, tell you about their life in a way that's entertaining, or perhaps therapeutic for them.
It's a good point.
I have a question, and I'm particularly curious to hear about this from Micah and Chloe, but I think this can be opened up to the whole panel. When it comes to this particular issue of anti-Semitism running so rampant, and then the line that Micah brought up about so many Jewish comedians using their life experiences as fodder for their routines, is there a difference in this context between laughing with someone and laughing at someone? Or in other words, is it possible to consume comedy from, say, a Jon Stewart, a Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, who we've talked about before? Is it possible to take that in and find it funny without being anti-Semitic? And I know that that's a big ask.
Yeah. No, I'm somebody who's of the mindset that if you're going to see a comedian, pretty much everything is off the table. So you should go in with the expectation that you're there to laugh. And if for whatever reason you come away feeling insulted, then that's, probably a whole nother conversation. But if there are obviously lines that shouldn't be crossed. I'm not the one to sit here and draw them. I just think that maybe it's ignorance on my part, but I feel like there's this assumption that when things are said about Jewish people, it'll just roll off their back. It's like, it's so mainstream, some of the things, that it's just like there's an expectation there that, oh, well, it doesn't really bother them.
Yeah, 100%.
And maybe that's because a lot of people don't speak up.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it too.
Yes to all of those things. You are allowed to laugh if a Jewish comedian, there's a lot of them, a lot of TV shows are written by Jews. If there's a Jewish joke or a joke about being Jewish and it's said by a Jewish comedian, by all means laugh. You're there to laugh. I wouldn't then take what they said and make it your own. Don't put your own spin on a joke that a Jewish comedian did about being Jewish and decide that, oh, well, now I'm going to tell this joke too. Especially if you're not Jewish. But yeah, I mean, anti-Semitism is one of the oldest hatreds in the book. And because it's been happening so long, yeah, I feel like a lot of Jews actually even perpetuate anti-Semitism by saying certain things. And there are shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld and even Friends that are, very Jewish at times. And, people want to laugh, and that's totally fine. I think it's just that don't perpetuate anti-Semitic stereotypes because you heard a Jewish comedian say something about their Jewish mom or said, something about their personal experience, because one, it's not the experience of all Jews. And that is really important. And two, it's their experience. It's their lived in truth. And you shouldn't be joking about anyone's lived in truth if you don't have that truth as well. And that's just my feelings about it. But yeah, if go see Jewish comedians and laugh with them. Just don't be anti-Semitic. Point blank.
I think there's always that question, too, when these people are doing stand-up. You have to ask, are they saying these things with a hateful tone? And, if you're a Jewish person making jokes about Jewish people, chances are they're not saying it with a hateful tone. But that's one way to detect if this is really a problem or not.
Yeah. Tone is so important.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of the word Jew. That specifically with tone is so important. I get a little uncomfortable when non-Jews say Jew, just in general, just because the way that word has been thrown around. I'm thinking about obviously the Holocaust nowadays, dirty Jew, greedy Jew. Like usually Jew doesn't have a great context when it's said by a non-Jewish person. So I prefer non-Jews to say Jewish person. Jewish people, not Jew or Jews. But tone is super important. And I'm not going to be like really offended if someone says, "Oh, Chloe, you're a Jew." That's a fact. It just depends on how they say it and what they're saying.
No, but that's super understandable. There can be a lot of triggering baggage that comes with the use of a term that has historically been used very negatively. So I appreciate you saying that. I think that's something that a lot of our non-Jewish listeners can take away in knowing that, like, hey, the tone with which I approach these conversations is going to have a pretty significant impact on the outcome of the conversation, how much I'm able to take away from it, and how much I can make Jewish people in my life see me as an ally. And that takes us to the importance of allies. I feel like that's been kind of threaded throughout this whole conversation. We've talked about the impact of allies not speaking up, not making a big deal when things like Colleyville happen. Anything that we would want to add that we would like to see more allies, potential allies, contribute in this space?
Show up for your Jewish friends, especially when something like this happens. Text them, ask if they're doing okay, if you can do something to support them. Post visible allyship is super important in 2022. And I know that can sometimes seem surface level, but it's so important to be visibly and vocally supportive of the Jewish people. And also ask questions. Like I said, I went to Utah. I have had every question about Judaism and the Jewish people asked, and some of them have been interesting to say the very least. But as long as someone is genuinely curious and wants to know more about the Jewish people and not in a way that's like malicious, I am so happy to answer any question because I want more folks to know about, first of all, what it's like being Jewish, and also about being Jewish and Judaism. And so ask questions and show up. Those are my two things.
I just echo that. I think back to, I have coworkers who are two different ends of the spectrum, right? Like one, or I won't say, there's like a group who have asked about, oh, well, you're celebrating Rosh Hashanah. Well, what does that mean? Like, what is that holiday about? Same thing with something like Passover. And then I'll have another colleague who will say something like, basically with no malintent whatsoever, they'll ask, oh, well, how was the holiday the other night? And it's like, well, it was Yom Kippur. It's the Day of Atonement. How do you think it was? It was
Happy Yom Kippur. That one always cracks me up when I get that text. Yeah.
So, and again, there's no malintent on the part of anybody there, right? But to the point earlier about awareness, to the point earlier about education that Pam raised, I think that goes a long way. And yes, I think somebody mentioned in the Discord, and I'm sorry, I forgot who did, but education is only good when it comes to people who are open-minded. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very, very true. But I think there are a lot of open-minded people on this podcast, and there are a lot of open-minded people who listen to this podcast. So the hope is that, take advantage of the resources and other things that are out there that can educate you. And, just like I would in other cases for myself on things that I'm not as familiar with, I feel like it's a responsibility just to your fellow human being.
Right. Well, thank you both so much.
Yeah.
I know that we don't want this to be the end of this conversation. It seems like this happens a lot with conversations of anti-Semitism. They get attention for a little while, but to y'all's points, the news cycle moves on and people forget, and we don't want to. So we would love to have y'all on again to speak more on this topic at length. Chloe put together an amazing list of resources that we will share in our show notes this week. And something else that we wanted to highlight is here at the end of January is Holocaust Remembrance Day, right? So very important in the context of that to be having this conversation. And I can't think of a graceful way to end this. Y'all might be better suited to do that than me.
The Holocaust was not that long ago, and there's still people alive today that were there and a part of it. For context, Anne Frank and Martin Luther King were born on the same year. So we are not that far from civil rights and from the Holocaust, and anti-Semitism is on the rise. You'd think that after, the genocide of the Jewish people, we would get better, but we haven't. So I think that, as, Micah and I said, just recognize that anti-Semitism exists and that it's something that is happening in the U.S. And on Holocaust Remembrance Day, which I believe is this Thursday, so in 2 days from now, just maybe think about what you can do better for Jews. How can you show up and show your allyship for Jewish people in your life, especially?
Well said. Thank you both so much for speaking on this. I know that it's work, right? This is emotional labor. So we are just profoundly thankful to both of you for being on today.
Yeah, very insightful. Appreciate all of your honesty and your stories.
We'll be back to the show in a moment, but first, a quick word from our second sponsor of the week, Talkspace. Each year, we tally up our shortcomings and try to do our best to make goals for the new year to work on ourselves. This year, don't just make mental health a goal, make it a routine with Talkspace. Therapy has been so valuable to me when it comes to not getting stuck in the past and being kinder to myself. In this era of work from home and digital learning, it's so convenient to be able to match with a licensed therapist from the comfort of your own smartphone or tablet. This is where Talkspace really shines. Talkspace fits your schedule. No more needing to wait for weekend therapy appointments or squeezing in sessions after a long day at work. You can text your therapist 24/7 and get replies throughout the day. And with video and audio sessions, you can easily fit mental health care into your daily routine. Make your mental health more than just another New Year's resolution with Talkspace. Visit Talkspace.com and get $100 off your first month when you use promo code MILL at sign up. That's $100 off at Talkspace.com when you use promo code MILL.
we've all heard of Joe Rogan. He has a very popular podcast on Spotify. He's a Spotify exclusive. Spotify paid hundreds of millions of dollars for him. He's very problematic. Amongst many other issues, he's also anti-vax and has questionable thoughts on COVID. Now, just over the past couple days, Neil Young has demanded, the singer, the iconic singer-songwriter, has demanded that Joe Rogan be kicked off Spotify for all his vaccine misinformation, or else he, Neil Young, will leave the platform. So this letter from Neil got posted to his website Monday night. It got taken down hours later. I guess his agent was like, whoa, Neil, what are you doing? What are you doing? Edit undo. Neil wrote, I am doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. Please act on this immediately today and keep me informed of the time schedule. They can have Rogan or Young, not both. So a pretty epic ultimatum. Now, earlier this month, hundreds of scientists and professors and public health professionals asked Spotify to develop a policy to handle misinformation about COVID on its platform, and they cited a recent Joe Rogan episode which had several falsehoods about COVID. So Spotify has been under fire for continuing to work with Joe Rogan for a while. Spotify says they prohibit dangerous, false, or deceptive material about COVID, yet they never take down any Joe Rogan episode in which he spews his COVID vaccine horseshit. He has spoken about the horse paste, ivermectin. I think he said he took that.
Yeah.
Is he taking horse shit instead of the vaccine? Is that what he's doing?
That too. Ivermectin, literal horse shit. And he does smoke a lot of weed, and we spoke about last week.
That seems like something that would be right out of Fear Factor.
Yeah, really. So actually, I'm a little torn on this situation because I don't think Spotify should no longer work with him. Because there is that whole little free speech thing. He can say whatever the hell he wants. The nice thing about podcasts is you can say whatever you want. You are virtually unregulated. We could sit here and praise ivermectin and any other crackpot COVID remedy.
Yeah.
Nobody would do anything about it.
But then you know what? Our sponsors would be well within their rights to drop our asses. Right? Because free speech does not mean consequence-free speech. People get it in their head that the Constitution protects them and their free speech from private companies firing them for violating terms of service or whatever employment clauses they have and whatnot. So I would just want to point that out, that like if Spotify decided to tell Joe Rogan to go fuck himself, they could do that. However, I do agree, Andrew. I don't think that they should completely remove him from their platform, but I don't think that he should be a Spotify exclusive. I mean, that's like putting their stamp and their seal of approval on his message to me.
Because it gets them a lot of money.
Exactly.
Joe Rogan is the top podcast, and I think he's been consistently for over 2 years almost. People are drinking the Joe Rogan Kool-Aid, and if it was me, I'd pick Neil Young every fucking time.
I know, right?
But Chloe's a classic rock fan.
I am a huge classic rock fan. Neil Young is Jewish king, first of all, coming off our last conversation. But genuinely, if I was sitting in the I make decisions for Spotify chair, I'd say fuck no to removing Joe Rogan because it's just not a good business decision. And that's what people care about.
And important reminder, they knew what they were getting into with Joe Rogan. They knew he was edgy. They knew he was batshit. They also knew he had a huge audience that would come over to Spotify to continue listening to him.
Worshipped. He's worshipped.
The other thing I would just add to this is I think it comes down to what are Spotify's values as a company. And does Joe Rogan and what he's talking about, measure up to those values? That's a question they need to ask themselves because, there's a lot that comes from all of this, right? There's PR, whether good or bad, there's potential for sponsorship to pull out from Spotify if, in fact, they don't like what he's saying. Neil Young could get other musicians to join with him and pull out, right? So there's a lot that could happen. Like, this could be the snowball that starts going down the hill. And I think, I'm sure they're having these conversations at Spotify.
Yeah.
But the truth is, even if they let him go, he'll go somewhere else.
And take a lot of people with him.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say too is, do you feel, because this does it enter in the Trump conversation of misinformation where he's putting things out there that are a danger to the public?
Yeah.
100%.
Neil Young feels that way too.
So I will say this. I joined several months ago. I haven't really talked about this on the show that much because I joined it expecting comedy, and what I found actually was very sad. I joined an ivermectin closed group on Facebook several months ago.
Oh my God.
I was like, for the show, I'm going to read these ridiculous things people are posting. But then I started reading it, and it's tragic. It's tragic, the lack of education and how sick people are getting and how they're literally giving themselves horse dewormer.
Yeah.
I know people with doctorate degrees that believe that, so I don't know if it's just the uneducated.
Oh, no.
To be completely honest
it's
with
not
y'all.
just them, but they bear the brunt of the negative impact, right?
Yeah.
Because how many people are, somebody who's a doctor, for example, presumably has the financial means to recover from COVID, without having been vaccinated. Joe Rogan, for example, I think he has a shit ton of money. So if he had a very serious COVID infection, he is someone who would be able to afford the top tier medical care that he could get. But random people who are in these Facebook groups, they can't do that. And so to me, this is the real harm that I see in what Joe Rogan is doing.
I really like what Neil Young is doing here. And I think, Micah, you mentioned this. Maybe some other artists will get on board with Neil. I would love that. I think Neil is a little more don't give a fuck than other artists will be. Neil Young has already had a long and storied career. He doesn't need new people to discover him on Spotify. And of course, we all know artists don't make much money on these streaming apps. Very, very little. So if Neil Young were to actually pull his catalog, he would probably lose, maybe a few thousand a year. That's a drop in the bucket for him.
For an icon.
But younger artists might be more dependent on Spotify, not because of the income, but because of the discovery through all the playlists and whatnot. So you're not going to see younger artists doing this. Maybe some older ones, maybe a Bruce, maybe, I don't know, somebody. Actually, Bruce isn't in control of his music anymore. So we'll see if anybody stands behind Neil. But I think this is the best way to do it. Have this artist rebellion. And that might actually cause Spotify to rethink this Joe Rogan decision, because people are coming to their platform looking to hear anything they want. And if Neil and some other older artists aren't there anymore, that sucks. I might go somewhere else, actually.
Taylor should leave.
I was about to say.
That's the one.
I was about to say Taylor
Her
Swift.
and Adele.
Well, Taylor Swift, Adele, and Beyonce, I'm thinking, huge, huge names. They weren't on Spotify when it first, actually for a while after Spotify was launched, because of the horrible pay for artists and because, they didn't feel like they were getting what they deserved. They came to some sort of agreement. I honestly don't think it's a crazy thought that those three might leave with, the icon that is Neil Young and say, hey, we joined because we agreed that you would do better and you're not doing better. So we're going to leave. And if those people leave, Spotify might just be done for.
Adele
if
got
them
take
to
the shuffle button off. Right.
She changed the entire
she's got
platform.
some power over at Spotify.
Oh my gosh. I'm still shook by that. So,
What a queen.
okay. I know. Well, there we go. I guess we'll see what happens. There's a big question mark over why Neil Young took down that letter from his site hours after posting it. Again, I speculated maybe his agent was like, whoa, Neil, wait a second, hold up. Somebody got to Neil. He clearly was pissed. I guess he posted it himself to his own website. I don't know. But I guess watch this space. Maybe something will come of this. But I was very impressed by Neil Young issuing that ultimatum. All right, we are going to turn to Millennials Make a Commitment in a moment, and we're going to hear if Micah has any resolutions for the year. But first, it's time for a word from our last sponsor of the week, Surfshark VPN, who improve and secure your time online. Surfshark keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or cyber criminals, and this is an excellent way to increase your online security. No one will be able to track or steal your data. You can listen to Joe Rogan in peace. It's also essential for when you're on public Wi-Fi so that nobody can snoop on your web activity. Most public Wi-Fi networks are unencrypted, meaning people can monitor your unencrypted activity as it goes through the air. So with Surfshark, you won't have to worry about that. And as if your privacy weren't enough of a reason to use them, Surfshark lets you virtually travel around the world so you can pretend you and your computer are in a different city or country. They have thousands of servers to connect to in over 65 countries. And one of the best benefits here is that you can watch streaming content that's only available in other countries. So if you have a Netflix subscription, you can go to Netflix in the UK. Or if you got a Disney Plus subscription, you can go to Disney Plus in the UK. And there's plenty more content there that you haven't seen.
I use Surfshark.
You do? Excellent.
Yeah.
For example, ABC shows are actually on Disney Plus in the UK. It's really cool. And this is also amazing for when you travel, because if you go abroad, you can still keep up with all your shows at home. So I want you to try this out. Go to surfshark.deals/MILL and use our code MILL to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. Give it a try. Download Surfshark, pick an international country, check out Netflix or Disney Plus or any of the other streamers. Once again, that's surfshark.deals/MILL.
You know I'm on French Netflix. You know I'm on French Netflix. Come on.
Chloe, I want to watch the French content on Netflix, please.
That's
please.
Pretty good, actually. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, thank you. I hated that halfway through. Thank you. Thank you for that review.
It's not quite as good as mine, but I give you some credit, okay?
Andrew's been listening back to that episode where you did the impressions of your mom to
Just to hear my voice.
Really perfect his French accent.
Honestly, I think about it all the time. The impression was incredible.
It's so good.
You pair that with the magnet story. It was just mind-blowing. So turning back now to Millennials Make a Commitment. This is a recurring segment where we are reading some of our listeners' commitments on air and hopefully inspiring some of you to follow through with your commitments for the year. Micah, since you haven't been on since we started this, do you have a resolution for the year?
Yeah, so I think we had this conversation last year around this time. Generally, and this is just my personal feeling, I think New Year's resolutions are bullshit, mostly because people don't set attainable goals. So one of the things that you'll often hear people will say, and, I was guilty of this probably for a long time too, just in terms of not setting actual goals. You say, oh, I want to lose weight. That's my goal for 2022. But the question then that follows is, well, how are you going to do that? Like, what are your actual steps that you're going to take? What are the small goals that you're going to set for yourself? Let's just say in the month of January in order to get there. And the proof is out there, right? The studies have been done because resolutions are generic and they generally have no structure. Most people give up on them after the first month, if they even get that far. But that being said, I think setting small achievable goals to start and then building on them throughout the year is great. One thing that I've done, and Andrew knows this, I get up at roughly the same time every morning and I go for a walk for about 25 or 30 minutes. And for me, number one, it's great exercise. Number two, it sets intention for the day. And I find myself to be far more productive and less anxious, honestly, throughout the day.
Yeah, it's helpful to clear your head.
Also, those Long Island sunrise pics.
I know, follow Mike on Instagram for those.
Yeah.
He walks out to the beach. He snaps a pic. He's direct messaged me some of these sometimes. I think that's why he's saying Andrew knows.
I'm caught up. I'm caught up because I'm seeing on the Insta.
Yeah. So and I think that, especially if you're somebody who deals with anxiety, which I know everyone probably has spoken about on this show. It's been such a stress reducer and anxiety buster. There's other things that I do, but I think this one in particular, I'm able to, as Andrew said, like you just clear your head. And so I would say though, for any New Year's resolution that you set, make it achievable for you and note the progress, right? So it's like, if you want to lose weight, set it so that you're going to lose 5 pounds by the end of January. And this is how you're going to do it. I just think it's so important because otherwise it's just going to be something that you're just like, I'm never going to get to that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I mean, this is a big reason why I like having a dog, just having an excuse to get outside multiple times during the day. Because I do enjoy being outside, but what am I going to do? Walk around by myself?
I do.
You could.
Like me and I was like, Micah,
wait, Micah does that.
I walk every day for an hour at least.
I'm just so used to walking with Brooklyn at this point. It would feel weird to not have Brooklyn with me, you know?
People walking alone. Oh my God.
I was half kidding. But yeah, it's a great reason to have a dog because you got to take him out. Well, looking at some of the ones from our listeners, we're going to read a few more today. Elizabeth said, I am no longer using the phrase touch base at work.
Oh, that's a good one.
I've recognized the problem, and I'm challenging myself to stop using nauseating corporate slang.
Yes.
I'm glad Mike is on. I feel like Mike actually uses this quite a bit.
Yes, he does.
Oh, I get it. I see touch base. Yeah.
Touch base, circle back.
Touch base.
Oh, I say circle back way too much. Oh, God.
Bandwidth is horrible. I'll say circle back. I have no shame about that.
I definitely say bandwidth sometimes, and I hate myself for it because I know it sucks. It's just hard to like undo the practice. I'm working on it. Maybe that can be another New Year's resolution for me.
The other one,
don't say bandwidth.
Laura, you probably hear this a lot too, which is when you're on Zoom calls and you say, well, you're about to start talking on a certain subject, but you'll say to like everybody else, oh, but Pam and Chloe, feel free to jump in at any point. Like that's another one.
Oh my God.
Oh, I hate that one. Or just to give you guys some time back, we'll finish this meeting 2 minutes
early. Give you 14 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
I know, Andrew
give you some time back.
I've
Too
never
late.
heard that one before, but that would really like start making my eye twitch after a while.
Well, with Zoom meetings, you would just have back to back to back to back. Like this would never happen if we were all actually working in an office like we were before. I literally have to like go on mute to go to the restroom because I literally have Zoom meetings nonstop. It is so bad.
I'm taking notes of phrases that I should cut out of my vocabulary.
Going forward, if I see any more bullshit corporate slang from you, Laura, I'll call it out.
Please
live
do.
On air. Yeah. Just to help you. Just because I know you don't want to use it anymore. Not because I'm being mean.
Yeah.
I'm trying
to be
mean.
Hey, Laura, circling back. You said bandwidth.
God.
Go fuck yourself.
I am so triggered by this conversation. I do.
Low-hanging fruit.
I like low-hanging fruit. I mean, what else you got to say? It's easy? You don't want to say that. Low-hanging fruit. Achievable. That's achievable. Okay. You know what, Elizabeth? That's enough for today. I think that was a good one. We'll just leave it there in the interest of time. We'll get to more next week. All right. So before we get to recommendations, what is coming up in After Dark today, Miss Pamela?
We're going to be talking about the reasons why we silently judge other people. So we'll be confessing some of those. And then Andrew's going to tell us how he got lucky, apparently. So that'll be exciting.
Y'all are going to laugh at me, I think. Maybe. We'll see. So that'll be available at patreon.com/millennial. I hope one of the things that we get to talk about silently judging on is this corporate slang that is used in our everyday lives.
I do have a segment in there about work. So
oh, good.
I don't think we're
silently
judging the corporate speak.
Very vocal.
Yeah.
Very vocal.
We have before. I mean, not today, but we have before. Time for some recommendations. I want to recommend that you ask your healthcare provider to reimburse you for the COVID tests you already purchased. You can even get reimbursement for tests that you purchased before Biden's announcement that your healthcare provider must cover the cost of at-home tests. So I'm in this situation. I bought at-home tests before Biden made this announcement that healthcare providers have to cover it. So I wrote to my healthcare provider the other day. I said, hey, can you reimburse me for the ones before whatever date that was? And they actually said, yeah, we can do that. So I got to fill out a little form and I'm going to get, I don't know, $40-$50 back. I have to see how many receipts I have.
Oh, I was going to say, are they requiring receipt proof? Because I don't have any of that shit.
Oh, see, I ordered a couple through Amazon and then another pair through another online site. So I do have those.
Bank statement wouldn't work. Like if you bought it with a card or anything like that.
I don't know, because that's just a line item in your bank statement.
That's true. Like if you bought it at Walgreens, it would just be like Walgreens. $40.
$40.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bottle of vodka, I swear. It was a COVID test.
I want to recommend everyone check out the trailer for Moon Knight. Moon Knight is one of the Disney Plus Marvel shows that will be coming out soon. It looks super cool. It's Moon Knight existed before this, but it's a lesser known hero in the Marvel universe. And I really appreciate that in this phase of the MCU, Marvel is really trying to spotlight a lot of these lesser known characters and bring them to prominence. So check it out. It looks super cool.
I wanted to recommend a show called With Love on Prime Video. It came out a couple of weeks ago. This is a show that hails from Gloria Calderon-Collette, who some of you might know from One Day at a Time. She did that reboot over at Netflix. So if you really enjoyed that, then I would recommend giving this a shot as well. It's about two siblings in their 20s, and they're just like trying to find love and purpose in their lives. And it features a stellar Latinx cast. So yay, representation. It's really fun.
Yeah, this kind of ties into what we were talking about just with the resolutions. But for anybody who is dealing with anxiety out there, there's a great book called Fuck Coping, Start Healing. It's by Dennis Simsek. He goes by The Anxiety Guy and has a really great YouTube channel, podcast, tons of free resources, and really breaks down anxiety in a way that I think anybody can understand, and honestly really looks at what's going on emotionally as opposed to maybe what you're experiencing physically, and tying all those things together. So it's just a really great book, provides some solid insight. So I highly recommend folks check it out. And if you don't want the book, the YouTube channel, obviously, the podcasts are all free.
Sounds good.
I just finished my yearly reread. I have a few books that I read every single year because I think that they're so important. And mine is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Classic.
It is a classic. I think that literally every single person should pick up this book because it also teaches you just how to treat people decently, which I actually don't think people learn in this, I don't want to say day and age and sound like really old because I'm not, but I genuinely think that everyone could read this, learn how to treat people in a decent way. And it is just an awesome book that will help you get ahead in life.
Meanwhile, we're going to silently judge people in about 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I know.
we say as we prepare to judge people from behind the paywall.
But they're not being decent. So.
I've yet to read this book. I've heard about it over the years. Honestly, I think one reason I didn't read it is because I heard that our former boss, Emerson, read it and loved it. And I was like, well, if he loves it, then I'm not going to love it.
But if I love it and you love
know?
me, then you must love the book too.
And you read it yearly. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Couple of reminders before we wrap up the show. If you have any feedback, you can email millennialshow@gmail.com, or you can use the contact form or anonymous confessional on millennialshow.com. Follow us on social media. We are Millennial Show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And on our new TikTok, we are Millennial Pod.
Hopefully we're not too chuggy on TikTok.
Wow, nice use of the word chuggy, Laura.
I've been paying attention.
Not with Chloe at the helm. It's going to be anything but chuggy.
Yeah, it's going to be sexy.
She would never. Thanks again, Micah and Chloe, for being on today. Again, we appreciate everything you had to share. Chloe is our social media manager for this podcast and MuggleCast, and Micah is the co-host of MuggleCast, the Harry Potter podcast. We're having a lot of fun over there as well. Just one big podcasting family.
Aww.
And there's Eric, too, who is going to come on Millennial at some point. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
I'm Pamela.
I'm Micah.
I'm Chloe.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.